Please allow me to introduce our speakers. First off, Megan McCoy-No is the brand storyteller for Pioneer Utility Resources. She is on a growing list of new coworkers that I'm really enjoying getting to work with. Before coming to Pioneer 7 years ago, she spent time steering the NRECA Straight Talk team and worked at Greystone Power, an electric co-op in Georgia before that. So Megan, thank you for being on.
Thank you. This is fun.
This is Megan's second webinar of the day. So busy person today for sure. The second person I'd like to introduce and the star of the show is Anna Politano. She is the Director of Public Relations and Communications at the Oklahoma Association of Electric Cooperatives based in Oklahoma City. She's been a co-op storyteller for more than a decade. At the end of 2019, Anna earned her Master of Arts degree in Media Management from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Her graduate thesis topic was Consumer Perception of Outage Communication, which is why we've asked her to join us today. Megan is going to share more of Anna's expertise in a minute, but Anna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Andy.
So Anna and Megan, thank you guys for putting this together. Thank you for your patience, letting me run through a long string of shameless promotion there to let everybody know what's going on. But that's what happens when you give the marketing director a microphone. So I'm really looking forward to your talk today. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Andy. All right, well, let me go ahead and pull up our slides to get us going. All right, so I am so excited to be here with Anna. This is just, and with all of you guys too, but like Anna and I go way back. And when she told me what her thesis was on, I was like, first off, I was like, well, of course, this is your thesis choice because, you know, other people might study some stuff, but Anna, if she's going to invest her time in something, she's going to do something that will pay off for the entire co-op nation. So I was really excited and very happy that you agreed to share some of these insights with us, because a lot of us, when we think about outage communications, we think about the news that we have to push out, but we don't often think about it from the consumer's point of view. So I was super excited when you shared this. And we know you did your research in 2019 and we were going to share it in 2020, and then things kind of, it was 2020. But I think the impact of this is still really relevant for all of us to have in mind. We had some storms that hit in February across a lot of the nation, and I think your co-ops, folks in Oklahoma, were impacted by this too. But our team at Pioneer Social was in a really unique position to see how these storms impacted social media use across several different utilities. We support 136 utilities, and during the storm, 75 utilities had outages because of the weather, right? Over that time, they had 44,095 Facebook comments and 56,000 content shares. And when you compare that to the normal social activity of those pages, it jumped 977% over the week before. So I think we can all agree consumers are moved to action when there is an outage. So we wanted to talk to Anna about her thesis work. And if you have not had the privilege of getting to learn from Anna before, I wanted to share a little bit about her. She is currently the Director of Public Relations and Communications. Congratulations on your promotion. Before that, and the way that I met Anna was when she was the editor of Oklahoma Living. And you have been managing that publication. You were there 10 years. I think a little more than 10 years. Yeah. So you did a lot of work there. You have a wonderful commitment to education and training at your statewide. And I've been able to speak at Oklahoma Living University, but it's a statewide communication training that you organize for your utility communicators. And I love the work that you do there. And there's something else that you do that I think is really special. Energy Trails is a story that you have been sharing for several years now. And many of us have, everyone has power or has grown up with power, the folks that we work with, but you are in this really unique position where you have gone, how many times has it been now? 4 times?
Yeah, we have done 4 trips.
Mm-hmm. So you've done 4 trips working with NRECA International This is a picture of you when you had the lights on celebration. Where was this?
This was in Guatemala in
Guatemala,
2018.
See, so you have this beautiful experience of also not just communicating here in the US, but also sharing stories from abroad and seeing folks connecting and getting electricity for the first time, which I just think it's just amazing that you're able to see both of those stories. A lot of us are going through this now with broadband and helping connect folks to broadband for the first time, which is super exciting as well. It's just a different type of storytelling. And I love the work that you're doing with Energy Trail. So I just had to just do a promo there because I think it's cool. So a little bit about Oklahoma's electric co-ops. If y'all are not familiar, you guys serve 122,000 miles of line. You cover most of Oklahoma. And some of your members serve folks outside of Oklahoma as well. I know Ozarks Electric does that. So if you love Anna as much as I do, I hope that you will follow some of their channels and see some of the great messaging that they have going on in their state. Now, Anna, can you tell us a little bit about the breakdown in Oklahoma with social media use?
Yes, so we actually at our statewide, we keep a database of social media followers. We just keep monitoring those numbers. Our two biggest investor-owned utilities on the state is Oklahoma Gas and Electric and PSO. But when we look at their social media following for Facebook and for Twitter, and we look at the collective following for co-ops, our co-ops take almost 60% of the pie charts there. So we like to show that to our co-op member systems to always keep in mind the responsibility that we have and truly the great scope that we have of connecting with consumers throughout the state. And then here on the infographic to our right, we see that most of co-op members are following Facebook instead of Twitter. So we just like to keep track of those numbers and see what our consumers are using and how we may most effectively reach out to them.
That makes so much sense. So let's dive into your research, and then we're going to have a Q&A on this. Folks, if you have questions that come up while we're talking about the things that Anna learned, please use the chat box and put those questions in there. I've got a couple questions to kick us off after Anna shares, but please, whenever you think of it, just put your questions in chat and we will run through those when we get done. So Anna, tell us about your research.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today. I'm very excited for the opportunity to be able to share. I want to say thank you to Andy and to Megan, and truly to the entire Pioneer Utility Resources team for the invitation. Big heart. One thing that gets me very excited about this is any of you you may have pursued graduate research, or you may have read about it. Usually when you try to go for that type of degree, they make you research and research and research. But a lot of times that body of knowledge or that piece of study that you do ends up collecting dust inside of a library. It just gets filed away. And so I saw that's what was going to happen to my study at some point, but I'm so grateful for Pioneer Utility Resources for giving me the opportunity to share some of the highlights of the study. And my hope today is that you find some nuggets of information that could be applicable to what you do, both on the electric side and on the broadband side as well. But as Megan mentioned, I had to choose a topic that I would be comfortable with. There was one thing that our professors hammered with us. They said, if you don't like this topic, you are going to be miserable. And they were right. I had to spend many, many hours, months and years researching this topic. So I'm very grateful that outage communications is a very fluid topic, is a very dynamic topic, and a topic that can be applicable to what we do. So this was a qualitative research approach. And because it was qualitative, one of the methods that I could pursue was focus groups. And truly doing consumer focus groups was the main highlight of this study. It was very rewarding. The quality of interaction and really to be able to listen to consumers was very eye-opening. So actually, before we dive into the findings, I wanted to share with you, if there is one takeaway that I want for you to get out of today's webinar, one takeaway is that you take the time to listen to those you serve. I could not emphasize that more. Take the time to listen to those you serve. Never overlook that, you know, we as communicators, I do that a lot. I like to assume. I assume things all the time, but that is truly not the best approach. We can really make mistakes by assuming, but truly when we invest the time to listen to those we are serving, we are bound for great things. We are bound to become more relevant and more effective. So that's what the focus groups allowed us to do.
Well, and I just want to mention, Anna, and I only know this because you're always going to focus groups. So like whenever I come to visit you in Oklahoma, you and Sid, before he retired, you guys would be on your way to another focus group. So before you did your thesis work, you already had focus groups going for Oklahoma Living Magazine and for the statewide content. How many years have y'all been doing focus groups, and how often do you do them?
Oh, that's a great question. So I know we do them every 2 years, and we are very grateful here in Oklahoma because our electric cooperatives are always willing to open their doors and to let us do that. And without their support, we could not do that. So every 2 years, so Sid Speary, who have just retired in January, who was a great mentor to me, he really taught me the importance of focus groups and how to invest on listening to members, but it really did not start with Sid. It started with a North statewide communicator called Bill Roberts, who goes back a long time with electric cooperative communications. Some of our statewide editors friends who have been around for a while might remember Bill Roberts. So it is a tradition. It is a tradition that we have incorporated, and we are always encouraging all the utilities to really think about investing on listening to your members.
I love that. I love that. Now, I'm excited because I want to dig into the questions that you asked in your study.
Yes. So we're going to talk about that. And one thing that I also want to encourage everyone is, you may think that, I don't know if you ever saw that, but I know I have. Outage communications, it's, you know, truly that's the core of, for electric utilities, when the lights are out, that causes an immediate need for communication. Broadband utilities, if the internet is out, that causes an immediate need for communications as well. So we really hear a lot about outage communications. One of my challenges for you today is that in all of our strategies, in all of our communications planning and processes, there is always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. So I want to challenge you that even if you have heard about this topic before, and even if you have a plan, always make sure to go back and try to improve it. So with that said, we can talk a little bit about more of the approach and the purpose of the research. We really wanted to dive in, and we wanted to understand from consumers what were their motivations for going to an electric utilities social media channel. What were they looking for? What drove them to do that? And what were their needs being satisfied when they went to the utilities social media page? So that's what we try to look at. So were their needs met, and how were they feeling about the messages they were communicating? So because this was based on a graduate research, I had to follow some communication theories foundation. One of them being uses and gratifications, which looks at the fact that every consumer is an active consumer, and every consumer makes discerning choices about their media consumption. So when they are holding a smartphone and they are going through a news feed, they have some distinguished needs and motivations that they are looking for. But if they're holding a magazine and they're flipping through the pages of that magazine, it's a different set of gratifications and needs that they're going for. So we were looking more into really their needs and their motivations. We also looked into the information society theory, which describes really the media landscape that we live today. We are surrounded by information and it's very crowded. It's extremely crowded. So we looked into those needs and those motivations, and really the big picture here, it's how can we improve what we do so that we are meeting those consumer needs. So one key point that is obvious, but that's a very strong key point, and that really transpired very clearly during the focus groups, is that when outages happen, they cause disruption. They cause an immediate disruption, whether it's from the electric side or the internet side, and that causes an inconvenience, and the consumer wants to know, and by the way, as soon as possible, we're going to talk about timing in a little bit, yeah. But they want to know what is going on and when their lives can go back to normal. Just to give you a very quick example here, I know there were some broadband folks on the call. In October of 2020, we had a significant ice storm in Oklahoma. We get to experience a lot of extreme weather events in Oklahoma, as you might imagine. But ice storm, yes. Ice storm in October, that doesn't happen often. Ice storms don't happen often in October. But at our statewide office here in Oklahoma City, we actually did not have internet service for a whole week. So none of our staff members could come back to the office to do their work. So that's just an example. You know, we talk about the lights being out a lot, and that happened to thousands of people. But internet is just the same way. We had to work from home because we couldn't come to the office. So in the research that all the reading that I read and all the studies that I read, there is really an agreement among scholarly studies that the use of social media heightens during natural disasters and during weather events. So there is definitely a direct correlation there. When disaster strikes or disaster is being forecasted, the use of social media will heighten. And we see that every day, and I'm sure you do too. So one of the key points that we got from the consumers is that when an outage happens, they want it to be acknowledged. They expect it to be acknowledged, and they want it to be acknowledged. So many times they will go to social media to see if their utility has acknowledged their outage. Consumers actually reported that social media is one of the top 3 mediums that they will use during natural disasters to get information. So they will go to TV, because a lot of consumers, especially in rural areas, they'll still watch their local channels. They will go to social media, and some others are going to go to either weather-related apps or to radio. If many of them said, you know, if I'm driving, I'm just going to turn the radio on and try to see what I can find out about the weather. But social media is absolutely on the top 3 for disaster-related information.
And that's not during an outage, that's before it ever starts.
Correct. Yeah. It's truly before, during, and after.
Yeah.
So, yes.
All right. So you had some key findings with your report. And I have to say, I think one of the biggest things is just the acknowledgement factor. That was my big takeaway, because we have I have had debates with people over how many folks need to be out before you start talking about an outage. And that's for smaller events. Like if there's a car accident and a pole is destroyed and you have maybe, 15 consumers out, do you say anything? But I feel like, I don't know, consumers, those 15 people or 200 people, whatever your number is, they need to be acknowledged, and they will not be thrilled if you don't, because I think all of us just want to be heard, especially when some of us are still working from home a year later. We just want to be heard. Yes. So I think that acknowledgement is huge. So walk us through your key findings so that we can learn from this.
Yes. So during the focus group, we actually asked 12 questions. And Megan is going to talk later about an ebook that she has put together. She did an amazing job. So in the ebook, you would be able to access the 12 questions so that you know exactly what we asked during the focus groups. But one key finding was the timing component. When outages take place, how long do you think as a consumer is acceptable for you to wait to read anything, any acknowledge or any type of update from your utility about the outage? And truly through the 4 focus groups that we conducted, the very common answer was about 30 minutes. There were a few that said 10 minutes to 15 minutes, but most folks were like, I think 30 minutes is a reasonable number. It's not too much. Gotta be patient there too, but 30 minutes was definitely a common trend. If an outage has taken place and they will go to check on information after 30 minutes and there is nothing, that can cause a level of dissatisfaction. Again, they want to be acknowledged. They want to know that their utility is aware and their utility is doing something on their behalf to change the situation. So 30 minutes definitely was one of the key findings.
You also found a really interesting difference between rural and suburban consumers, which I was not expecting. I guess I should have expected that. But as I was reading through your thesis, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That was unexpected for me. Can you share about that?
Yeah, well, so to provide some background, I conducted 4 focus groups. 2 of them were held on towns where our 2 largest state universities are located at. So where the 2 largest state universities, you could say that a lot of their demographics might lead they lead busier lifestyles to some extent, and they can be identified as more of a suburban type of area. One of them, for example, in Norman, Oklahoma, is in the Oklahoma City metro area. So they're very close to the capital, and a lot of their consumers who are on that area could be considered a suburban type of consumer. So 2 of the focus groups were took place close to these, on the town of these state largest universities. And then the 2 other focus groups were mainly rural areas. They were a little bit farther away from the big city. So on the more rural focus groups, we did notice really a deep appreciation. When they talked about their electric cooperative linemen and they talked about their electric cooperative employees, they really refer to them as really they like next door neighbors. People that they see every day on soccer games and baseball games and church and the grocery store. So the component of being a very tight-knit community was seen right away. But what's interesting here was that the more rural consumers said that they would go first to Facebook, that they would be their primary source of information if they had an outage. And in contrast to that, on the other 2 focus groups on suburban areas, they also expressed appreciation. They also expressed truly a great appreciation, but they did come across as they have a busier lifestyle. They wanted to see more frequent updates, so they were more eager for updates. And they also didn't report the same frequency of usage for Facebook. They actually reported wanting to go to the utility app more often, and also text messaging was very desirable for this group as well. So that was a unique finding. Again, the way that I'm reading into this is that the busier the lifestyle that adults might have, text messaging has become a very viable, a very instant means of communication. A lot of people are connected to social media, but when you get a text message, that's more immediate because you don't need to go to social media to check it. So that was an interesting finding there as well. Folks in the rural area, of course, are texting and such, but we could tell a little bit of a stronger draw to the electric cooperatives Facebook page.
Yeah. I love that. It goes to making sure you know your audience and consumers what they prefer, because I wouldn't have thought about that. So you found three big drivers, three common threads through all of your focus group work and your textual analysis, because you analyzed 500 Facebook posts, more than that, when you were pulling all this information together. Share these three takeaways with us.
Absolutely. So as part of the research, we had to come up with meanings. Now, what does all of this mean? I wrote about 60 pages on the topic. And at the end, 60 pages is like, how do you digest this? So there were truly, when we try to summarize it in meaningful takeaways, there were three main meanings for this research. Number one, there is a very strong need for information today, a very strong need for information. And when we say need, we really mean need. Consumers need to be informed. And that we really see that through some of the comments that are being made. If you are a student of Outage communications and you read through those comments a lot, there is truly an inherent need that needs to be addressed. If the need is not met, that could cause, now I'm going to jump to number 3 here, that could cause a weaker connection to the utility. When the need is met, that strengthens the connection to the utility. They see the utility as a part of their lives. And as being a part of their lives, just take our relationships that we have on a day-to-day basis, our spouses, our children, our parents, our neighbors. For any type of relationship, you need ongoing conversation, you need ongoing up to date and see how things are going. And it's the same with a utility, even though, a lot of consumers, they could say, I only worry about my outage when it's off, and I really don't worry about it when everything is working well. But truly, at the end of the day, utilities are part of their consumers' lives, and they need to nurture that connection. So the second finding here, I'm jumping a little bit around everywhere, but
no worries.
Consumer expectation, that's directly linked to the need for information, but really they expect it. It's not something that, let's just offer it just for the sake of offering. They expect information and updates to happen. So we're going to dive in just a little bit on each of the three findings here. We have examples from social media to share with you. And on the ebook that Megan will be sharing later, there will be even more examples that you could look at and see how that's applicable to your communications as well. So on need for information, when we took the collective responses from the consumers participating on these focus groups, 69% of the consumers said that they check social media outlets ahead of a storm or natural disaster event for preparedness purposes and for safety precautions. So I like to put screenshots of readers' comments, and the first one here says, outstanding customer service, keeping us all informed has been key. Thank you so much for your hard work. So this is a consumer. This is a consumer who is saying, keeping us informed has been key. That does shows the heart of what the consumers want and what they're expecting. And one thing that we found through the focus groups, it's okay to say there is an outage and we do not know when it's going to be restored. We don't know, we don't have all the answers yet, but we know that an outage is taking place and we are working to resolve it. We are working to resolve it. In many instances, the majority of the instances, they want to be acknowledged. Even if you don't have all the answers yet, they just want to be acknowledged. So definitely a key finding there.
Well, And that helps you, it helps them know that you're human and you're in it with them instead of you being this big nameless corporation, right? If you're like, hey, we hear you, we know, we are working on it, we'll let you know when we hear more. And even if you just use that kind of language, that casual human language, that again will help strengthen it, right? If they build that connection with you and they know you're in it with them.
Very true. Very true. Yes.
I like Paula. How long is long term?
Yes. Even
Details, people. We need details.
Yeah. So for the second mini, consumer expectations, what we learned is that the updates truly empower the consumers, and it really gives them, they feel like they are in the know. They feel like they are in the know by reading updates. And really, in many instances, as you all know so well, they rely on the updates to be able to make decisions. But this came through very clearly through the focus groups. 91% of the consumers who participated said that they feel a need to be informed and to know that their outage has been acknowledged. The very first consumer comment here from April, thank you for your updates and hard work. Even though I can see it, even though they can see the work, they can, unless you post photos and videos, which we always encourage, you guys do a fantastic job of doing that. But I think this comment is so interesting because what she's saying is that even though she's not seeing all of the behind the scenes of your work, the updates that you're providing, it's allowing the members, the consumers to feel that, you know, they are working on my behalf, it's going to be okay. So I really like that comment a lot. You know, I like to study the words and what they mean behind it. And but that's one that always intrigued me, is that even though they don't see it all, but just by quick updates that you provide, that brings a peace of mind to them.
Yeah.
So
we'll all be okay soon, we promise.
Yes. Yes.
Now, talk to me about connection to utility, because everything ties into this. And this is why we care. I mean, if we didn't care, we wouldn't be talking about this, right? We would just push whatever information we want or not, we wouldn't care. But connection to utility is so important, especially because a lot of electric co-ops are getting into broadband. And I know we've got some telcos with us on the call too. So you guys know how important connection is, but it's not a matter of, you know, they have to take service from you. You've got folks that have a choice now, and you've got to maintain that connection. It is so important to, as my daughter would say, to fill their buckets, to make them feel happy and you know, to build trust with you. So how is that impacted by outage messaging?
I think that's a great question, Megan. I think you hit the nail on the head when you use the word care, because truly, as humans, as communities, that's really what all of us want. We want people who care and who are working on our behalf, and they are genuine, and they are genuine. So I think utilities are in a very unique position to be able to show that care. It is the utility industry, the electric side and the broadband side, is a service-based industry. It is an essential service that people cannot live without. And how can you not, you know, but we are all humans behind making all of that happen. We are all humans, and truly making that shine through. Here in a little bit, we're going to show a few examples of social media, of posts made by some electric cooperatives here in Oklahoma that really will exemplify how we can make that care shine through. So specifically for the focus group that we conducted, 89% of the consumers actually said that they found that information is helpful, that they appreciate that information. That's very encouraging news. That's very encouraging news. And really that tells all of us, let's keep up the great work. However, I would challenge all of us to say that even though this is a very high percentage, and this is a great finding, we can't rest on the response of one event. Even if we did well on one event and we responded well and it was great, we can't rest on that. Again, going back to what I said in the beginning, there is always room for improvement. There is always room for growth. And truly that connection to the utility is something that we need to constantly pursue. All the time, we need to constantly pursue. And every little thing matters. Every small response matters. And truly it's being there, it's showing up. It's, it's really making the utilities presence known and really showing that we care, collectively we care. What I notice a lot, and I know many of you have noticed the same, is when you read through a lot of those consumers, members' comments, you see that many of them will empathize with the field crews, the linemen who are out there that are going through sacrifices, that their families are also home with the lights off, of no internet. So these are people just like you and me, and they are also going through sacrifices. They are not at home with all the comforts and all the luxuries. So we are in this together. It's really trying to convey that we are in this together, and the consistent and genuine messaging will strengthen that connection more and more every day. It's every day, 24/7. So really the screenshots that we put here about member comments, we could really publish a huge book of the nice comments. And I know many of you have dealt with criticism and complaints and ugly comments and hate comments, but it's really rewarding to see some members and some consumers come into the defense of the utility because they know that they are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
So
I love, it's, you're feeling bad, have an outage where you have an amazing response, and then you'll feel good again when you have those members with that strong utility connection cheering you on. It's fun. So Anna, you already mentioned that we were going to be sharing this, but there's a couple key factors that you found of ways that folks can strengthen messaging based on what resonated with the focus groups and with your textual analysis. So walk us through those.
Yeah, so just real briefly, just some tips that we found through the research. Be timely. Really, if acknowledge the outage or the situation as soon as you can. Use clear language. It's we as communicators, we want to learn all the technical terms, and we need to learn all the technical terms so we can most effectively communicate that to the consumers. But we need to keep in mind that the average consumer just wants to know in very simple language, what is going on? Just tell me what is going on, what I can expect. So show empathy, always show empathy, so important. Again, we are all in this together. We are all people, all of us are going through this together. So extremely important. And I could not emphasize number 4 more, the importance of working better and creating stronger relationships with your operations personnel. Many times, I don't know if this has happened in other parts, but I know here in Oklahoma, we have published some photos before that, some safety violations could have happened there. So it's important that really there is a good marriage, a good relationship between the operations personnel and those in the communication side. There is really a benefit both ways. So we just try to always remind all of our communicators, work with your operations personnel to the best you can, talk about it on the blue sky days when there is no crisis going on, and how the flow of communication can happen well, but don't overlook how important this is.
Yes, I completely agree. So here are a couple of the examples. You were talking about providing the location updates, I think is really key. Folks want to know, but what's near me? I did see if someone mentioned substation names. That does not help people.
Yes.
You've got to say the areas. Now, this was a really nice video that you shared, and I actually went on Central Rural Electric's Facebook page and looked at some of these videos that they shared during their outages in October, and I thought it was a really nice way to do it. instead of just text updates.
Mhm.
And did you want to mention anything about CEO updates? What seemed to work well with the focus groups?
Yeah, what I was going to say there is consumers appreciate when they hear from the CEO, whether it is just a message in writing, as we had here from Cotton Electric, but there are other cooperatives that will do videos from the CEO. And that works extremely well. We have several co-ops in Oklahoma who are using videos from the CEO and really from around the nation. On Central Rural Electric's case, and Jillian Thibault is their VP of marketing. Jillian just really added a face to the situation. And as Megan said, there were several videos. She did really well. So it really adds a personable touch, whether that comes from the CEO or from another spokesperson at the co-op.
I love that. What else worked?
Yeah, so I like what Canadian Valley did. They did a great job. Just, it's so simple, but it really resonates with people. When they were close to all of their outages being restored, they put on the top, Canadian Valley is feeling grateful, because they were grateful. They, outages were being restored and people were going to sleep with knowing that they had electric power and they were warm. And towards the end, they said, "Good night, CVEC family, stay safe and warm." So I think that adds emotion, and people relate to that. They resonate with that. Everybody is ready for a warm night, knowing that they can have a hot cup of coffee in the morning because they have power. So I thought that was well done. Southwest Rural Electric, many of you do that across the nation, just updating the original outage posts, which work really well, and it's truly a best practice to give the ongoing updates for the situation.
Yes, I often call posts that you don't update zombie posts. We'll have a webinar about that this October. Yeah, avoid zombie posts. So they're the Walking Dead. Update the original posts because they have legs and people share them a lot.
Yes, yes. And then finally, when the lights are on and the restoration is complete, never miss the opportunity to celebrate. Just never. Just an example here, Oklahoma Electric Cooperative, they did that very well in October. And but truly, it's a reason to celebrate, and your consumers will celebrate with you. So don't miss the opportunity. It's a great opportunity.
I love that. All right. Well, I mean, we could talk about this all day. We get very excited. At least I get very excited about this. But we have some really helpful tools that we're going to be sending out to all of you. Anna mentioned the new ebook based on her thesis. We're really excited about it. And we also have links to her full thesis. If you are a nerd like us and want to dive into all 60 pages, we'll have a link to that as well. But we have Social Storms. You guys are getting a sneak preview of it this week, and then we'll be releasing out to other folks later. We also have something we did in 2019, an ebook called Coping with a Crisis for an extended outage communication tips. That was really highlighting some of our friends in Florida, what they had dealt with, and then best practices for planning crisis communications from folks across the country. So it's a great tool. And then social media tips during an outage is a one-sheet guide that I have been working on and adding to for, oh, good Lord, Anna, I think I put it out maybe 10 years ago, and I just keep adding to it and changing it up as technology changes. But it's a really nice kind of reminder of things you can share before, during, and after a storm. So we are going to open it up for some questions. I think we only have about 10 minutes. Andy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. And it looks like our chat has tons of fun questions. Andy, do you want to guide us through this?
Yes. So we've got a couple of good questions from folks. I appreciate y'all sending those over. If you've got, it looks like 3 or 4 in there. So if there's still time, if anybody else has any more to send over, I'll read the first one here. You mentioned acknowledging outages, even with 15 members out, for example. Our rule is to post if 1,000+ members are out. If we were to post for every outage, we would be making tons of outage posts. Do members really want to engage with that type of content so often? And if you want to take that first, and then Megan, feel free to add anything to that.
Yes, I think this is a great question. And this was actually addressed as some of our focus groups as well. Of course, we know that every utility will make the decision that is best for them. But on some of our electric cooperatives who participated, their policy is actually to only acknowledge outages if it's either 100 plus for one co-op, another co-op is 200 plus, or even 500, even to the 500 range. I think that's truly a utility decision on what they would have to come up with a threshold. My personal opinion, I think 15 outages is important. Those consumers are important, but I don't know if that would prompt a social media post at that point.
I 1,000 is, I mean, again, it depends on the size of your utility, but you think if 1,000, that means if there's 900 people going to your Facebook page, not getting any information, that's a lot of people that aren't being acknowledged. I think 15, you're right, it's probably too low. Figuring out the right threshold for you is good, but yeah, if it's too small, you're right, you're going to have tons of people or tons of messages on your page. I think it also drives home the need to have other content on your page, because I know there's some utilities that only have outage updates on their page, and that's sends a different message too.
That's not a good look. Yeah.
It's not a good look.
Right.
So finding a good balance. I know some folks are sharing in the chat right now what their numbers are. Anna, you're right. It's a personal decision. 1,000 seems really high for a threshold, but 100, 200, 500 seems well. Yeah, figure out what's right for you, but just bear in mind that whatever is under that threshold, those are the folks that you might be disappointing. So maybe invest in text messaging options specifically for those folks. And then they're still feeling acknowledged, just on a different channel.
Perfect. Yeah. Next question. And thank you guys for sending these in. Next question. Anna, are there differences in consumer needs between messaging ahead of disaster-related outages and planned outages? So are there differences?
I would say,
go ahead.
I would say one key thing that is really not a difference, but it's truly to keep in mind, is it really boils down to preparedness. So ahead of a disaster, they want to prepare. I think the difference here with planned outages, if consumers know for sure that that planned outage is going to happen, then they need language that is more specific. This will happen. You need to prepare for this to happen. And disaster related, you need to be informed, you need to be aware, but it could be hit and miss. But again, being proactive about it, and really making sure that the information is helping with their preparedness. I think that's key.
Got it. Here's a question on providing location updates, and I appreciate the questions still coming in. There's quite a few to get to. On providing location updates, do you feel this could be a safety issue if members, especially angry members, would try to find the crews at those locations, demand their power be restored? Is there any concern about that when you talk about locations?
I think this is an excellent question. So this could happen. Angry members that are going to try. I mean, nobody can say here and guarantee that it will never happen. So one way to prevent that from happening is maybe make the location updates a little bit more generic. You're not giving specific GPS location marks, but just do more like a breakdown of the service area. If you feel, I will say that the co-op that decided to do that, they are in a very rural area, and again, very tight-knit community, and it worked well for them. But if safety is a concern, you could do a more generic, but on very large service territories, those specific location updates could help a consumer, because they're like, well, this is when I could expect restoration in my area.
Yeah, I will add that outage maps, folks are pretty careful about those, because when people were first bringing those out, you can get, if you want, all the way down to the streets. And they're like, oh, well, that's a security issue, because if a home's power is out, then someone could come by and know that the security system's not working. So what we did back when I was at Greystone is we named our substations so that whenever a substation was out, we didn't say the name of the substation, but I had a list, and it was the areas, the communities impacted. And we would just say people in this community and this community are being impacted by this. And for us, that was general enough that it gave people an idea of the area, but it wasn't terribly specific. So I don't know. I think you have to give them a location, not super specific, but name your communities in ways that your members will understand, and them at least that information, and be prepared beforehand. Do that now. And if you do it by substations, you can have that list. And I just had it taped right next to my computer when I would do outage communications, because SCADA, they would send me which substations were down, and I would like, okay, so this is impacting this area. That's what worked for us.
Great. Here's another question for you, Anna. Does your research only take into account Facebook posts, or does it include Twitter as well?
This is a great question. So for this research, I keep it narrow. So yes, Facebook was the Facebook, the social media sites that was mostly used. I do think that a similar study would lend itself really well for Twitter, extremely well for Twitter. I've also shared that my platform here was electric cooperatives in Oklahoma, and the majority of our followers for social media is on Facebook. However, if I was working right now for the biggest investor-owned utility in Oklahoma, and I was doing that, I would do it for Twitter, because they have a higher follow of Twitter. So there is this one thing unique about this research, that at the end, your professors want you to add, how could this research be improved upon, and how the research could be expanded. And that's certainly an area that it could be expanded in other areas as well.
Great. I know there's a good question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's related.
Yep.
Melissa was just making sure we saw it.
There's another question about photos I want to get to for sure, but let's jump ahead to stay on social media while we can. This question came in. We have had some customers ask us if we can have a separate Facebook and Twitter channel just for outage communications, since that is all they are interested in from their utility. Any thoughts on this? Are you aware of any public power utilities or co-ops doing this? So that's kind of an interesting take. Just the facts. Just the facts is all they want. What do you think, Anna?
To do that.
I have never heard of another utility, of any utility, just having an outage only. I've never heard of that. I'm sure it could happen. My initial reaction is I'm not sure the value of that, because you need to build your following. You build your following, you connect with your following also on non-crisis times. So I think it's an ongoing relationship that I don't know that you want to limit that for outage only, because there are other ways you want to connect. Megan might have some insights there.
I've been covering electric co-ops and public power utilities in social media and how they're using it for a long time now. And when folks use Twitter, a decade ago, because Facebook was 17 years ago, but not about a decade. It's when we all started kicking in and joining. Twitter folks tried playing with that. I saw folks use Twitter just for energy efficiency updates, or just for, what do they call it? When you have peak times where folks are using it and you're sending out alerts for that. So some folks started using it and playing with it for that, but they couldn't get a lot of traction. And most of the folks that I saw doing that, they ended up just consolidating their accounts and keeping one united messaging way, on social media to engage with their members. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's the other question that comes up when an electric co-op is getting into broadband. Do we create a separate channel for that? And that's an individual decision, but you have so many ways that you can communicate with folks, and you're going to be missing out on some opportunities, I feel, if you silo your messaging, like that. Instead, I would say, and we saw, Anna, from your research, the texting option. I think that makes sense for having a unique channel just for outages because it can be tailored specifically to certain areas. So I think investing in that, and there's some really good resources out there for text messaging and connecting it through Smart Hub or whatever you use, that makes sense to me. A separate Twitter account or a separate Facebook page does not make as much sense.
Got it. Yes, Jonathan Farmer with our director of member solutions had sent something over similar. That sounds like those are the folks you need to get on text messaging. So thanks for that idea, Jonathan. So another point that I saw somebody bring up on here is with Twitter, it seems like half of the people on Twitter are reporters and media types. So to keep in mind that if you're trying to communicate with the media, Twitter might be a good spot. So I thought that was useful.
Agreed.
Really good comments coming in from everybody. All right, let me go back to this other question previously because I thought it was a good one and I want to make sure that we get to it. I know we're about 2 minutes past the hour, so we're running a little long, but the questions are still coming in and we're not, nobody's leaving. So that's a good sign.
It's exciting stuff, Andy.
Right. So the question comes in here. What are good practices for getting photos during storms? Working from home and with weather-related road conditions, I have to rely on line workers to get photos and they don't always remember to do so. Obviously, they're busy. If they do, they send them a week after the storm when it's not timely. So that is not ideal, but any ideas, Anna and then Megan, on best practices for getting photos from the field?
I think it truly boils down to relationships with the line crews or supervisors of line crews who might go to the field. There are many times as communicators, we feel our hands are tight because we may not be there. And many times we're not, we can't get there. But truly nurturing those relationships, always keeping in mind that we know that they have a job and that's their priority. That absolutely, at least their priority. But I think a lot of communicators have been able to find that there are a few of line crews that, like one or two, or there are a few of them who are actually communicators at heart. They just need that to be nurtured. So really communicating on no outage times with them, how important those photos are for communicating with the members, for telling a story of what is happening, exchanging cell phone numbers so that you can text. Not only with line workers, but maybe they're supervisors. Maybe the supervisors will go to the field. So I really believe relationship, because if they take a break, they're not doing line work, they could snap a few photos for you. So again, not their number one priority, but most of them would be, if you establish that relationship, I think you would find that some of them would be willing to help and to send you some good content.
I would also add that I'm friends with a lot of line workers from my days at Greystone, and certain line workers, and we've got different ages of line workers. A lot of the younger line workers, they're posting while they're working too, to their personal channels. They may not think about sending it to you. So maybe you identify people who do use social media a lot and already understand that need for information that consumers have, because some of them, they have the need to share doing, right? So if you can find those ambassadors, we had somebody that loved taking pictures and we ended up sending him to some photography classes because he wanted to. And that built that relationship with him and our communications team to help us by sending more photos down the line too. But yeah, donuts, we always delivered. I would take Krispy Kreme donuts out to the docks at least once a month just to catch up with the crews. So
not a bad idea.
It pays off to invest on that relationship for sure.
It really does.
We had a couple of folks chime in on things there and talk about how important it is, do a little bit of training. And somebody from our team mentioned, this is probably something they've done before, but having them learn to turn the video when they're shooting video, to turn the phone sideways to shoot it instead of virtual video, or vertical video. So Well, I'm looking through the comments and I believe, well, there may be over here in the Q&A. Nope, I believe that we've gotten everybody covered. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for attending. Like I said at the beginning, we have a lot of other great stuff coming up throughout the year. But Anna, I want to sincere thank you to you for taking the time to do this. Megan, an equally sincere thank you there as well for getting all of it together. So thank you all again for doing this. Thank you everyone for attending. And we look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.